Welcome back. As we start to prepare the turkey and family members to come together, maybe a good time to talk about family estate and financial planning. So let's bring in our legal expert, Danielle Mayoras. We've seen you a lot on this show, always just so willing to talk to us about some topics that may be tough to talk about. And today, we're talking about kind of the estate planning. Why is Thanksgiving, Christmas, the holiday season a good time to kind of bring this up and talk to the family about it?
It's really one of the few times that everyone gets together. I know my family of 5, we're finally going to be back together. And you think about your grocery list and all these other things for this Thanksgiving holiday, but I actually put together a legal and financial checklist because we want to start having these conversations with our family.
Do you feel like that might be a little much, or is it like it's just a necessary conversation to have?
I think it's a necessary evil, unfortunately. I mean, you don't have to make it so heavy, but it's a good time to ask mom and dad, grandparents, cousins about some of these tough questions, because the worst case scenario would be if you don't have those conversations and something happens, what if they're not protected or you can't help them?
Well, how do you start that conversation? Do you just get right into it? Do you ease into it like, oh, if this turkey's more expensive, we might have to downsize our home? Like, do you bring in humor? What's that look like?
You can bring in even something in the news. Jay Leno recently was in an accident. So no one's promised tomorrow. So I think it's a really great thing to be able to bring in someone else and then have those conversations. And the first question really is, do you have the documents in place?
What are those documents for those at home that are like, oh, maybe I need to do that?
It really is a case-by-case basis. It can be anything from a will to a trust to power of attorney documents. So it's just having the conversation to make sure you're protected.
Is there a certain age at which you think a kid or a younger adult child will maybe remember this and kind of heed the advice of their parents when they have this topic of discussion?
Well, I think as far as doing the documents, once you reach the age of 18, believe it or not, you have to get these in place, because if you don't and there's an accident or something happens, then your loved ones have to go through the court system. So I think it's important from age 18 up all the way to grandma and grandpa, you name it.
Thanksgiving, usually is a time to come together, and it's usually like taboo topics, right? You don't talk about politics,
yes,
with your family. You bring up estate planning, like you said. It could be yourself, your grandparents, your grandchildren all talking about it. What is the resolve supposed to be? Is it just an open dialogue when you have this conversation?
The goal would be, if something happens to you tomorrow, do you have the documents? Have they been updated? Where are they located? I mean, all that information you and I may have in our minds, but we might not share it with someone. When you think of Aretha Franklin and things tucked into the couch, I mean, we want to be prepared, and we want our loved ones to be able to help us when we need it.
On the flip side, what if that conversation is met with pushback, especially maybe from kids that don't want to have that conversation? What do mom and dad say to keep them involved in the conversation?
I mean, pushback is probably not too surprising, but to really get them to think about, if something happened to you, we don't want to go through the court system. Anyone who's familiar with probate court knows it's time-consuming, it's expensive, and you really lose control to the court. So if we want to control our own affairs, it's a conversation we all need to have.
Is it a quick conversation? How do you get to the end of that conversation to make sure you're feeling good about the estate planning?
It depends on who you're talking to and how receptive they are to it. But I think the basics, like you were starting to say, do they have the documents? Are they updated? Have they sat down with those professionals in the last few years? I mean, laws change, people have babies, start new businesses. Documents, whether it's legal or financial, are not static. They always need to be updated. And so that's part of the conversation as well. So if they say, I have the documents, the conversation doesn't end there.
And like you said, it's a pivotal time to talk about it. The whole family's together. Danielle Mayoras, thank you so much for being on our show.
Thank you, Jordan.
And we'll see you next week, and happy holidays.
Thank you, you too.